The crystal chandeliers of the Wellington mansion cast dancing shadows across marble floors worth more than most people's homes. But tonight, those shadows would witness the most spectacular downfall Beverly Hills had ever seen. The Millionaire invited the Latina cleaning lady as a cruel joke. She arrived like royalty, and everyone was in absolute shock when they discovered who she really was. What happened next would expose a 20-year-old murder, destroy a fortune built on blood, and prove that sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one everyone has chosen to ignore. Welcome to the Black Side Stories. Before we continue, tell me in the comments from which city in the world are you watching this video today. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be remembered, subscribe to our channel and help us share their stories. The main hall of the Wellington estate exploded with malicious laughter as Isabella Rodriguez descended the marble staircase. Her midnight blue dress shimmered under the lights, a gown that cost more than the annual salary of most people present. But this wasn't laughter of admiration. It was pure, cruel mockery. Look who decided to grace us with her presence. Marcus Wellington whispered to his circle of elite friends, raising his crystal glass of Dom Perignon. Our dear cleaning lady has arrived. Isabella was 35 years old and had never imagined she would one day step foot in that ballroom as a guest, even if it was meant as a joke. For 2 long years, she had cleaned every inch of that mansion. Always invisible, always silent, watching. These wealthy people treat each other with rehearsed politeness while treating her like she was nothing more than furniture that happened to move. The invitation had arrived 3 days earlier, delivered with that cruel smile she knew all too well. Isabella remembered the moment perfectly. She was scrubbing the bathroom tiles when Marcus appeared in the doorway, his eyes gleaming with malicious intent. Charity gala this Saturday, Marcus had said, extending the gold-embossed envelope with theatrical flourish. Dress code, maximum elegance. You surely have something suitable in your wardrobe, don't you? The laughter of his friends had echoed through the hallway like the cackle of hyenas. It was an obvious trap, a calculated attempt to humiliate her publicly, to put her in her place in front of California's high society. Marcus had even invited social media reporters to document what he smugly called an educational moment. But Marcus Wellington didn't know who he was dealing with. He saw only what he wanted to see, a poor Latina woman desperate enough to clean toilets for minimum wage. He had no idea that Isabella Rodriguez carried secrets that could turn his world upside down. Let's make this interesting, Marcus had said to his wife Catherine the day before the gala, as Isabella vacuumed nearby, pretending not to listen. $100,000 says she doesn't have the nerve to show up. And if she does, she'll be the entertainment for the evening. Catherine had laughed, her voice dripping with condescension. You're terrible, Marcus. The poor thing will probably show up in something borrowed and feel so out of place that she'll leave within 15 minutes. They spoke about her as if she were invisible, as if her feelings didn't matter. This was nothing new. For 2 years, Isabella had endured their casual cruelty, their assumption that poverty made her less human. But what Marcus didn't realize was that every insult, every dismissive gesture, every moment of humiliation was being carefully cataloged in a mind that had spent 20 years planning for this exact moment. As Isabella walked through the hall under hundreds of mocking stares, she kept her posture straight and her gaze serene. She moved like someone carrying secrets that could reshape the world around her. Her steps were sure, calculated, as if each movement were part of a long-rehearsed choreography. My God, she actually came, whispered Diana Ashford, wife of a prominent senator, to her friend. And look at that dress. Where on earth did she get something like that? She probably rented it, replied Sophia Mitchell, daughter of an oil magnate, trying to disguise her own insecurity with cruelty. Can you imagine? She'll be paying for it in installments for the next year. How pathetic. The crowd pressed closer, cell phones appearing like vultures circling Carrion. Everyone wanted to capture this moment. The cleaning lady who dared to crash high society. They had no idea they were about to witness history. What none of these people knew was that Isabella hadn't bought, borrowed, or rented that dress. She had simply reached back into her own past to retrieve it, a past that Marcus would have done anything to erase if he had known it existed. The dress had belonged to her mother, Elena Rodriguez Wellington, worn to events just like this one 20 years ago when she moved in completely different circles. Before everything fell apart, before the betrayal, before the murder, Marcus approached. His chest puffed out with arrogance, surrounded by his billionaire friends. His confidence was sky-high. After all, he had orchestrated this as a public display of power and social control. "Isabella, what a pleasant surprise," Marcus said, his voice carrying across the room. "I must admit, I never doubted you'd come. After all, when a person like you receives an invitation to an event like this..." He paused dramatically, waiting for the laughter from his audience. "A person like me?" Isabella repeated, her calm voice cutting through the air like silk-wrapped steel. "Please, Marcus, finish your sentence." For a microscopic moment, something in her tone made Marcus hesitate. There was a firmness there, an authority that didn't match the submissive woman he knew from the mansion's hallways. But his arrogance quickly took over again. "Well, you know, someone who doesn't normally frequent this kind of environment. You must be feeling quite intimidated by all this elegance." Isabella smiled. Not a submissive or nervous smile, but something dangerously serene that made nearby guests stop laughing instinctively. "Intimidated?" she repeated softly, her dark eyes meeting his with an intensity that made Marcus unconsciously take a step back. "No, Marcus. I'm feeling exactly where I've always belonged." The silence that followed lasted only seconds, but it was enough for the entire atmosphere of the party to shift. There was something about the way Isabella spoke, the way she moved, the way she occupied space that defied every expectation these people had about who she should be. Marcus cleared his throat, trying to regain control. "Well, I hope you enjoy the evening. I'm sure it will be educational for you." "Oh, I'm certain it will be educational for all of us," Isabella replied, her gaze slowly sweeping over the group of guests as if cataloging each face for future reference. "If you're enjoying this story of justice and shocking revelations, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell, because what these privileged people didn't know was that Isabella carried with her a secret so explosive that it would turn this night of planned humiliation into the greatest lesson on prejudice and underestimating people that Beverly Hills had ever witnessed. Marcus was having more fun than he had imagined. Isabella hadn't run away in embarrassment as he'd expected. She remained there, with that strangely confident posture that was beginning to bother him in ways he couldn't explain. "Everyone," Marcus announced loudly, tapping a silver spoon against his crystal glass to capture the attention of all 200 guests. "I'd like to introduce our very special guest tonight, Isabella, our dedicated cleaning lady." Laughter rippled through the hall like cruel waves. Cell phone flashes began to pop as socialites took photos to post on their Instagram accounts with sarcastic captions about diversity and charity cases. "Marcus," Catherine murmured beside him, feigning concern. "Don't you think you're being a little cruel?" "Cruel?" Marcus laughed loudly. "I'm giving her the opportunity of a lifetime. When else would someone like her ever get the chance to attend an event like this? She should be grateful." Isabella stood motionless in the center of the room, all eyes fixed on her. But instead of the embarrassment they expected to see, there was something deeply unsettling about her expression, a serenity that seemed to come from someone who had weathered far worse storms and emerged stronger. Diana Ashford approached with her group of friends, all wearing poisonous smiles designed to wound. "Isabella, dear," Diana said in that condescending tone wealthy women perfect over decades of looking down on others. "Tell me, how long did it take you to choose that dress? It must have been so challenging to find something suitable." "Actually," Isabella replied with a calmness that made Diana's smile falter, "this dress has a very special history. It belonged to my mother." "Her mother?" Sophia Mitchell laughed nastily. "And where did her mother acquire a dress like that?" "Some upscale thrift store." Isabella's smile held secrets. "My mother wore this dress the last time she was in a ballroom like this. That was 20 years ago, when she was still Elena Rodriguez Wellington." The silence that followed was deafening. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. People turned to stare. The name Wellington hung in the air like an unexploded bomb. Marcus, who had been laughing with his inner circle, turned slowly. His face had gone completely white. "What did you say?" "Rodriguez Wellington," Isabella repeated, her voice cutting through the air like a blade forged in 20 years of patient fury. "It's funny how some people choose to conveniently forget their own family history." Marcus's face began to drain of all color. Catherine instinctively grabbed her husband's arm, sensing that something was terribly wrong. "You're delusional," Marcus said, but his voice came out less firm than he intended. "I don't know what sick game you're playing, but this isn't a game, Marcus," Isabella interrupted, taking a step toward him. Several guests instinctively backed away, sensing the shift in power dynamics. "This is history. Our history. The history you tried to erase when you decided it was more convenient to pretend that certain people in our family never existed." The cell phone cameras were still recording, but now for a completely different reason. Whispers began to spread through the room like wildfire. Catherine pulled Marcus by the arm. "What is she talking about? Marcus, what is she saying?" "She's lying," Marcus replied, but his hands were shaking slightly. "She's a deranged employee trying to get attention. Security." But Isabella reached into her small evening purse and pulled out an object that made several guests gasp audibly. It was a ring, not just any ring, but the traditional Wellington family engagement ring, engraved with the family crest and featuring the distinctive sapphire that had been passed down for 4 generations. "This ring," Isabella said, holding it up for all to see, "was given to my mother by her father-in-law, William Wellington, my grandfather. The man you told your children died without an heir." Marcus was now visibly shaken, sweat beading on his forehead despite the mansion's perfect climate control. "Where did you get that? How dare you steal?" "Steal?" Isabella laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "Marcus, you can't steal something that is rightfully yours by birthright." Diana Ashford, who had been watching open-mouthed, whispered to her friend, "My God, do you think she's telling the truth?" "Impossible," Sophia murmured, but her voice no longer carried its earlier confidence. "Marcus would have told us if he had family, wouldn't he?" Isabella heard the whisper and turned to them. "Family." She paused dramatically, looking directly at Marcus. "Oh, I'm not Marcus's cousin, if that's what you're thinking." The room held its collective breath. "I'm his half-sister." The explosion of murmurs and muffled exclamations was immediate. Marcus looked as if he had been struck by lightning. "This is ridiculous," he shouted, but his voice cracked like a teenager's. "My father would never. You're making this up. William Wellington had an affair with my mother, Elena, for 5 years." Isabella continued relentlessly, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. "She was the family's piano teacher. When she discovered she was pregnant with me, your father promised to take care of us. And he kept that promise until he died." Catherine now had both hands over her mouth, staring between Isabella and Marcus, as if watching a horrific accident unfold in slow motion. "You," Isabella said, pointing directly at Marcus with the authority of someone who had finally found her voice after 20 years of silence, "decided it would be easier to pretend we never existed. You cut off our monthly allowance, sold the house your father had bought for my mother, and left us in absolute poverty. I had no obligation to." Marcus began desperately. "You had no obligation to take care of your father's family," Isabella interrupted, her voice rising for the first time. "Interesting philosophy, considering you inherited 100% of a fortune that should have been divided between us." The weight of Isabella's words was slowly penetrating the minds of the guests. Several began to distance themselves, physically from Marcus, as if proximity could contaminate them with scandal. "Prove it," Marcus said desperately, grasping at straws. "Anyone can make up a story and produce a ring." Isabella smiled again, and this time there was something predatory in her expression that made the room's temperature seem to drop 10 degrees. "Oh, Marcus, do you really think I came here without proof?" She took out her phone and gestured toward the mansion's entrance. "You can come in now." 3 people entered the hall at that moment who would change everyone's lives forever. The first was Rachel Torres, Beverly Hills' most respected investigative journalist, her camera crew following behind. The second was Michael Chun, an attorney specializing in inheritance law and criminal fraud. The third made Marcus Wellington stagger as if he had been physically assaulted. "Dr. Peterson," Catherine murmured, recognizing their family's long-time private physician. "What are you doing here?" Dr. Peterson, who had treated William Wellington during the final months of his life, walked to the center of the room. His hands were trembling, but his voice was steady with the weight of 20 years of guilt. 20 years ago, he began, his words carrying to every corner of the silent ballroom, "I was coerced into signing a falsified death certificate. William Wellington did not die of natural causes. He was slowly poisoned with arsenic over a period of 6 months. The hall erupted in gasps and muffled cries. Rachel Torres raised her hand for silence. Please keep your phones recording. This is an official confession being documented for legal purposes. Marcus was now visibly desperate, sweat streaming down his face. You're insane, Peterson. My father died of heart problems. Everyone knows that. Your father discovered the money you'd been embezzling from Wellington Industries for years. Dr. Peterson continued relentlessly, each word falling like a hammer blow. He had changed his will to include Isabella as his heir and was preparing to report you to the authorities when he began showing the first symptoms of arsenic poisoning. Isabella remained silent, tears of vindication finally streaming down her face. After 20 years, someone was telling the truth. Michael Chin opened his briefcase and extracted an official document sealed with the state laboratory's stamp. This blood sample, preserved by Dr. Peterson, was tested last week by an independent forensic laboratory. The arsenic levels were not just present, they were fatal. You're all lying. Marcus screamed, his composure completely shattered. This is a conspiracy to destroy me. Isabella put you up to this. Rachel Torres stepped forward, her journalist's instincts capturing every moment. Mr. Wellington, I have authenticated recordings of 7 conversations you had with Dr. Peterson between 2003 and 2004, where you explicitly threatened to destroy his medical career if he revealed the true cause of your father's death. Isabella finally spoke, her voice cutting through the chaos like a sword tempered in injustice. Marcus, you didn't just murder our father. You stole 20 years of my life. I didn't kill anyone. Marcus pointed frantically in all directions. You're all conspirators. Liars. Then explain this, Isabella said, connecting her phone to the mansion's sound system that a recording began to play, Marcus's voice unmistakably clear through the speakers. Peterson, you're going to keep your mouth shut about anything unusual you found in the old man's blood work. If you say one word, I guarantee you'll never practice medicine again. And as for that woman and her bastard daughter, they're on their own now. They can starve for all I care. The silence that followed was absolute. Even Marcus's most loyal friends now regarded him with horror and disgust. Catherine stared at her husband as if seeing a stranger. Marcus, she whispered, her voice breaking. You really did this. You murdered your own father. 20 years. Isabella screamed, her composure finally cracking under the weight of 2 decades of injustice. 20 years of cleaning my own father's blood money off the hands of his killer. Isabella took a deep breath, regaining her deadly calm. You want to know how I obtained all this evidence? I didn't come to work here by accident, Marcus. I applied specifically for this position. I spent 2 years in this house, preparing, gaining access, collecting evidence while you humiliated me daily. Marcus tried one final, desperate gambit. Even if all of this were true, it doesn't change anything. The inheritance was distributed years ago. It's too late. Michael Chin smiled for the first time that evening. Actually, Mr. Wellington, when there is evidence of murder and fraud, all assets can be redistributed according to the original will. And we have a copy of William Wellington's true final testament. The sound of sirens began echoing from outside. Police cars were pulling up to the mansion. Isabella approached Marcus, who was now collapsed against the wall like a cornered animal. Do you know what my biggest regret was, Marcus? It was believing that you might change on your own, that you might develop a conscience. That's why I waited so long. Please, Marcus whispered, all his arrogance evaporated like morning mist. Catherine, the children, this will destroy our family. You destroyed our family the moment you chose murder over morality. Isabella replied with haunting finality as the police officers entered to arrest Marcus Wellington for murder, fraud, and embezzlement. Isabella walked out onto the mansion's balcony. Below, dozens of reporters were waiting. TV cameras, photographers, journalists. The story was already spreading across social media like wildfire. Catherine followed her onto the balcony, tears streaming down her face. Isabella, I truly didn't know anything. I was living a lie for 20 years. I know, Isabella said gently. You were a victim too, Catherine. But now you have the chance to be free of his poison. What happens now? Catherine asked, watching her husband being led away in handcuffs through the same hall where he had tried to humiliate Isabella just hours before. Isabella looked out at the glittering city below, lights stretching to the horizon like fallen stars. Now, Catherine, justice will finally be served. And maybe Beverly Hills will learn that true class has nothing to do with the size of your bank account. 6 months later, Isabella Rodriguez Wellington sat in Marcus's former office, now completely transformed. The walls that once displayed trophies of greed now showcased certificates from educational programs and photos of employees promoted from entry-level positions to executive roles. Marcus had been sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole. His personal fortune had been completely confiscated to compensate his victims. Isabella was just one of dozens of people he had destroyed over the years. The real victory wasn't destroying Marcus Wellington. It was proving that when you build power on justice rather than fear, that power multiplies and lifts everyone around you. Marcus had tried to humiliate a cleaning lady and discovered he had underestimated an heiress. More importantly, he learned that dignity cannot be bought, inherited, or stolen. It is earned through our choices when no one is looking. If this story of justice and transformation touched your heart, subscribe to our channel for more incredible, true stories that prove good always triumphs when you have the right strategy, and that sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one everyone has chosen to ignore. This has been the Black Side Stories. Until next time, remember, behind every great achievement is someone who stood watch, someone who believed, someone who preserved what matters when no one else was looking.